The woman at the security checkpoint looked at Nora Whitman with a calm but unwavering gaze. Her voice was low and clear, quiet enough that no one nearby would notice, yet firm enough to send a chill down Nora's spine. "You need to come with me, right now." Nora had not even processed what was happening when her heart began to pound. Just minutes earlier, her husband had dropped her off at Charlotte Douglas Airport with a brief, cold, hurried embrace. He had left too quickly, as if lingering even a second longer might reveal something he never wanted her to see. 3 months earlier, Ethan Whitman had given his wife a trip to Miami. On paper, it was a gesture to rekindle their marriage, but in Nora's mind, from the moment the cream-colored envelope was placed on the dining table, something had felt slightly off. Not enough to name, just like a faint scratch on glass. At first glance, it seemed harmless, but the longer you looked, the more the light bent in ways it shouldn't. That morning, their kitchen had been unusually quiet. Dawn had barely broken, a pale gray light spreading thinly across the countertop. Nora stood by the sink, holding a cup of coffee gone cold, her eyes resting on a schedule packed from top to bottom. She was a speech therapist for children in the suburbs of Atlanta. Her work required patience, consistency, and a quiet kind of strength most people never noticed. At work, people saw her as gentle, composed, inward after her mother passed. They were not wrong. They just did not know that beneath that calm was a woman who remembered the smallest details, who sensed shifts in the air before they fully formed, and whose intuition was sharper than her fragile appearance suggested. Ethan appeared in the doorway, wearing a dark blue shirt, a cream envelope in his hand. He smiled, but the smile never reached his eyes. That was the first thing Nora noticed. "I have a surprise for you," he said. She turned. Her gaze settled on the envelope. The edge had been sealed with tape, more carefully than necessary for an ordinary gift. Just a small detail, but details like that were exactly what Nora noticed. She took it. Their hands brushed. Ethan's palm was cold, slightly damp. He always sweated when he was tense, and this morning he was tense. Inside were business-class tickets to Miami, along with a reservation at a seaside resort for a few days. Everything was arranged neatly, quickly, almost too perfectly. Nora looked up, genuinely surprised. She had known nothing about this trip. "Miami," she said. "Why so sudden?" "I thought we needed to get away for a bit," Ethan replied. "Just you and me. No work, no pressure, none of the heavy things lately." It sounded right. It sounded like what a husband should say when he felt a marriage slipping. But truth does not live only in words. It lives in the pauses between them, in the way eyes are avoided, in how a hand tightens just a little too much before letting go too quickly. Nora looked at him. She wanted to believe him, desperately. After her mother died, the world inside her had lost its color. She still went to work, still ate, still replied to messages, still lived like a normal person. But that was just the surface. Inside, she was so tired that on some days, if someone told her things would get better, she would cling to that sentence like someone drowning clings to driftwood. "This is too much," Nora said softly. "I thought our finances were not in the best place." Something flickered across Ethan's face. Quick, sharp, then gone. "I'm handling it," he said, his voice softening. "I know there has been distance between us. I know you do not trust me like before. But I want to fix that. I want us to feel like we used to. Like we used to." Nora knew exactly what image he was trying to bring back. Long drives with no destination. Late dinners because they were both busy. Light brushes of shoulders in the kitchen. Quiet whispers before sleep. It had all been real. That was why the change had been so exhausting, not because it came suddenly, but because it came so slowly. She kept wondering if she was imagining the problem. Ethan stepped closer. The way he stood, the way he looked at her, the way he lowered his voice. Everything was just right. Too right. He had always been good at that. Good at appearing reasonable. Good at making a valid question sound like unnecessary doubt. Good at making it feel like if something was wrong, it was because someone else was being overly sensitive. Nora looked back down at the tickets. Miami. The ocean. Sunlight. A break. A chance to see if their marriage could still be saved. Caleb, her older brother, flashed briefly in her mind, always suspicious that Ethan was hiding something. Then Maya, her coworker, who had once said plainly that Nora was shrinking inside her own life. And yet, between those warnings, there was still a part of her that wanted to believe it was not too late. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's go." Ethan's smile widened, relief slipping through. Not the clear joy of a husband pulling his wife closer, but the exhale of someone who had just confirmed that a crucial piece was still falling into place. He hugged her. Nora stood still in his arms, eyes open. Over his shoulder she caught a glimpse of the laptop on the counter, its screen not fully dimmed. Just for a second, but long enough to see a word glowing at the center. Beneficiary. When Ethan let go and moved quickly to close the laptop, it was too quick. "What were you looking at?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Nothing," Nora said. But she knew exactly what she had seen. That night, Nora packed her clothes into a small gray suitcase. Ethan stood beside her, telling her not to bring too much, just a few outfits. He checked each compartment more carefully than necessary before zipping it shut. She forced a small smile and asked what he was looking for. He said he just wanted to make sure she had not forgotten anything.
The answer sounded harmless. The feeling it left was not.
His phone buzzed several times while she packed. Each time, Ethan stepped into the hallway to take the call, speaking in a low voice. Nora could not make out the words, only the rhythm, quick, controlled, the kind of tone people use when they do not want to be overheard. When he returned for the fourth time, Nora was standing at the bedroom doorway. "Who was that?" she asked. "Work," he replied. Ethan had a particular way of ending conversations he did not want to continue. Not harsh, not loud, just an invisible door closing with a few neat words, leaving the other person feeling like asking more would be unreasonable. Nora had lived inside that pattern long enough to recognize it, even when it was wrapped in softness. That night she lay beside him without sleeping. The room was dark, the air conditioner humming steadily, the faint trace of an unfamiliar scent on his collar still lingering in her memory. She stared at the ceiling, and that vague feeling returned, not fear of a specific danger, just the sense of stepping into something she could not yet see, while her body already understood it was not safe. The next morning, Ethan carried the suitcase to the car before she could. He did not let her touch the trunk, did not let her hold her phone for long, did not allow silence between them to stretch far enough for her to change her mind. Outside, the air was cold. The trees stood still under a pale gray sky. Nora locked the door, then turned to look back at the kitchen, the place where that cream envelope had quietly shifted everything. She did not know where this trip would take her. She did not know how many layers of truth the man she still called her husband was hiding behind that smile. And she did not yet know that in the journey ahead, the woman so often seen as quiet, soft, and easily trusting would be the one who saw the clearest, stood the strongest, and finally took back the right to tell her own story. She opened the car door and sat in the passenger seat. The car pulled away, and everything began to change.
The road leaving the suburbs was still damp with early morning mist, rows of trees standing motionless on both sides under the pale light of dawn. Ethan drove with steady hands, his eyes fixed ahead, yet something in the way he held the steering wheel made Nora feel a distance between them, larger than usual. Not a physical distance, but one made of things left unsaid. There was no music in the car. The silence stretched, thickening with every mile. Nora sat in the passenger seat, her hands resting on her knees, her gaze drifting out the window. Houses slipped past, familiar streets moved by like a slow-motion reel. Everything looked normal, and that was exactly what made her uneasy. She had lived with Ethan long enough to notice the smallest changes, not because she was suspicious, but because she paid attention. Some people learn to observe early in life, not to control others, but to steady themselves in uncertain situations. And right now, everything felt uncertain. Ethan glanced at the rearview mirror once, then again, not the casual check of traffic, but a quick look, then back, as if he were watching something behind them. Nora did not ask immediately. She waited. It was a habit she had built over the years, not reacting too quickly, not rushing to fill silence with questions. She let things reveal themselves a little more. Ethan's phone vibrated. He picked it up almost instantly. No speaker, no glance toward Nora. He pressed it to his ear and spoke briefly. "Yeah, I'm on my way." His voice was lower than usual, faster than usual. Someone spoke on the other end. Nora could not hear the words, only the rhythm. Not a casual conversation, but something precise, purposeful, each sentence short, direct. Ethan gave a small nod, even though the other person could not see him. "Yeah, it's fine," he said. "Everything's still on track." On track. The phrase landed clearly in Nora's ears. She did not turn toward him. She did not show a reaction. But inside, a familiar feeling rose. The feeling when one detail does not quite fit the bigger picture. If this trip were just a getaway, it would not require a plan like that. Ethan said a few more short sentences, then ended the call. He placed the phone in the console between them. No explanation. No eye contact. He reached for the radio. An old song filled the space, but not the feeling. "Who was that?" Nora asked softly. "A client," Ethan replied immediately. "Just work." "You still have clients like that?" The question was not accusatory, just a natural follow-up, but Ethan tightened his grip on the wheel. "I'm trying to handle things for both of us," he said. "If you could just trust me a little, it would be easier." His tone was not loud, not sharp, but it carried enough weight to make Nora's question feel like unnecessary pressure. Nora stayed quiet for a few seconds. She knew this pattern. A question left unanswered, yet somehow the person asking it ended up feeling at fault. Before, she would have pulled back, but today, something felt different. "Where is my mother's money?" she asked. This time, Ethan did not answer right away. The car shifted lanes, picking up a bit of speed. The silence stretched longer than before. "I told you already," he said eventually. "It's being invested. You can't withdraw it right now." "Invested where?" "You don't need to worry about that." The response came too quickly, too neatly, and without detail. Nora turned to look at him. "Don't need to worry," she repeated. "But I've seen letters from the bank. I've seen transactions I don't understand." Ethan exhaled softly, as if holding his composure. "I'm consolidating things to manage them better," he said. "It's complicated. I don't want you to stress over it." It sounded reasonable, but Nora noticed something. All of Ethan's answers were structurally correct, but they were missing something essential: transparency. She did not need every detail. She just needed the feeling of being included, and that feeling had been gone for a long time. Nora's phone vibrated in her pocket. She took it out. The name on the screen was Caleb, her brother. The moment she saw his name, something in her steadied. Caleb never circled around things. He spoke directly, sometimes too directly, but always honestly. She was about to answer. Ethan reached over, his fingers brushing her wrist.
"Not now," he said. "It's my brother." "I know, but you're already stressed. I don't want to add more pressure." The words were still gentle, still reasonable, but this time Nora did not ignore the feeling inside her. She looked down. Missed call. Just a small thing, but it brought back so many moments before. The times she almost asked more, then stopped. The times she felt something was off, then told herself not to overthink. The times she chose silence to keep the peace. The car kept moving. The highway opened ahead, wide and straight. Ethan drove smoothly. Everything outside continued at a normal rhythm. But Nora realized something. She no longer wanted to keep things normal, the old way. She turned toward the window. Her faint reflection appeared in the glass. A woman others saw as gentle, agreeable, someone who avoided conflict. But she knew the truth. She was not weak. She had simply been used to putting others before herself. And that habit, over the past months, had made her ignore too many signals. Ethan glanced at the rearview mirror again. This time Nora saw it clearly. Not checking traffic. Tension. Someone trying to stay in control. She turned back to him. "What are you worried about?" Ethan paused for a fraction of a second. "Nothing," he answered immediately. Too immediately, and that was the answer. Nora said nothing more. She did not need to. Because sometimes the truth is not in what people say, but in how they avoid saying it. The highway stretched forward. Airport signs appeared in the distance. A trip. A chance to fix things. At least that was how it was described.
But deep inside, Nora was beginning to understand. This was not just a trip. It was a test. Not of their marriage, but of herself. Would she continue ignoring what she felt, or would she finally face it? The car accelerated, and for the first time in a long while, Nora stopped trying to make everything feel easier. She simply observed and waited, because she knew something was coming. And this time, she would not look away. The car merged into the airport lane as the morning light grew clearer. Blue signs appeared one after another, arrows pointing toward drop-off, short-term parking, and terminal entrances. Traffic thickened. The sounds of honking, engines, and rolling suitcases began to fill the space that had once been silent. Ethan slowed down. His movements were precise, familiar, yet something beneath them felt rushed. He checked the time, then glanced at the electronic boards ahead, then at the rearview mirror again. The glances were brief, but frequent enough that Nora could not ignore them. Nora sat still, her hands resting on the small suitcase between her legs. She was no longer trying to find a reasonable explanation for every detail. She simply observed, noted, let things reveal themselves. "We're here," Ethan said. His voice was lighter now, as if he had just passed through something tense. He pulled over at the drop-off curb. Quick, clean. Almost the moment the car stopped, he opened the door, stepped out, moved to the back, and opened the trunk. He took Nora's suitcase out and set it neatly by the red line. Everything flowed smoothly. Too smoothly. Nora opened the door and stepped out. The air outside was cool, carrying that distinct airport scent. Coffee, warm plastic, fabric, and a faint trace of urgency that was hard to name. Announcements echoed from inside the terminal, a steady female voice reading flight information. Nora stood beside her suitcase. Ethan closed the trunk. The moment between them stretched longer than usual. "Are you coming in with me?" Nora asked. A simple question, but Ethan did not answer immediately. Just a brief pause, but enough. "I need to handle something quickly nearby," he said. "Just a few minutes. You go check in first. I'll meet you inside." Another reasonable answer, but Nora realized something. All of Ethan's reasonable answers over the past month shared one thing. They could not be verified in the moment. "Which gate?" Ethan asked, as if to keep the conversation on the surface. Nora glanced at her digital ticket. "Gate D12. "Good," Ethan nodded quickly. "Go on in. Don't be late." Nora did not move right away. She stood there looking at him. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. In that brief span, Nora stopped searching for answers. She simply looked. And what she saw was not a man seeing his wife off for a short vacation. There was no hesitation, no lingering warmth, only a quiet, focused tension, as if he were waiting for something to fall into place. Nora gave a small nod. "Okay." She turned her suitcase and pulled it toward the glass doors. They slid open automatically. The air from inside the terminal rushed out, carrying noise and bright white light. Just before stepping fully inside, Nora turned back. Ethan was still there, not moving, his eyes fixed on her, not watching her leave, watching her. When he noticed her glance back, Ethan raised a hand in a small wave. A quick smile appeared on his lips, but this time, Nora had already seen the moment before that, the real moment, and it did not match the smile. She stepped inside. The terminal was bright and expansive. Fluorescent lights washed over everything. People moved constantly, pulling suitcases, talking, checking their phones. No one paid attention to anyone for long. Nora pulled her suitcase toward the security checkpoint. Her steps were steady, but inside her thoughts were beginning to align. The phone call in the car. The word plan. The way Ethan had stopped her from answering Caleb's call. The way he checked the suitcase. The way he stayed outside instead of coming in. Each detail alone was not enough, but together they formed a pattern, not fully clear, but directional. Nora stopped at the end of the line. In front of her was a family with 2 children. Behind her, a young man scrolling through emails on his phone. Everything around her was normal, but the feeling inside her was not. She did not know exactly what she was worried about, only that if she ignored this feeling, she would repeat what she had been doing for months. And this time, she did not want to. At the ID checkpoint, a TSA officer stood observing the line. Her name was Lena Brooks. In nearly 20 years on the job, Brooks had seen all kinds of travelers. The rushed, the anxious, the excited, the exhausted. And those who simply did not quite fit. Not because they were doing anything obviously wrong, but because of how they carried themselves in the space. This morning, Brooks had noticed a car at the drop-off area. The man stepped out too quickly, did not go inside, stayed behind, watched. It did not feel like a normal goodbye. And the woman, Nora, walked into the terminal with a calmness that was slightly strained, not panicked, but not at ease either. Brooks did not like jumping to conclusions, but she also did not ignore her instincts. Nora moved 1 step forward in line. She did not know she was being observed. She only knew that the feeling in her chest had not faded. If anything, it had sharpened. No longer vague, no longer easy to dismiss. A question surfaced in her mind. Not, is something wrong, but, if something is wrong, what will I do? That question changed everything, because it no longer placed her in a passive position. It gave her a choice. Brooks stepped away from her post, slowly, without drawing attention. She walked toward Nora. Nora saw her before she spoke. Brooks's eyes were not tense, not threatening, just clear. "You're Nora Whitman, right?" Brooks said. Nora paused. "Yes." "I need to speak with you for a moment. It won't take long." Her tone was calm, but firm enough that Nora understood this was not optional. "Is something wrong?" Nora asked. Brooks held her gaze just long enough. "I just need to verify a few details. she said, "just to make sure everything is in order." Everything is in order. That sentence should have reassured Nora, but it did not. It made her realize something. Maybe she was not the only one sensing that something was off. She glanced back toward the glass doors. Ethan was still there, phone in hand, eyes directed inside. And this time, Nora no longer questioned whether she was imagining things. She turned back, gave a small nod to Brooks. Okay. She pulled her suitcase out of line, followed the unfamiliar woman. With each step, the distance between her and the crowded terminal behind her grew. But the feeling inside her was not of being pulled away. It was of moving closer. Closer to the truth, whatever it might be. And for the first time in months, Nora stopped trying to make things feel easier. She only wanted to know. What was really happening? Brooks led Nora away from the line, guiding her through a narrow passage beside the ID checkpoint. A gray door opened with a key card, then clicked softly shut behind them. Inside, everything was noticeably quieter. The light was still white, but softer. The faint scent of old coffee and paper lingered in the air. The room was small. A metal table, 2 chairs facing each other, a filing cabinet against the wall. Nothing intimidating. And yet, it was precisely that ordinariness that made everything feel clearer. Brooks gestured for Nora to sit. "Ms. Whitman," she said, her voice calm, "I'll keep this brief. There are a few details that made me want to double-check your travel information." Nora set her suitcase aside and sat down. Her hands rested on her lap, but her fingers pressed lightly together. "What kind of details?" Brooks did not answer right away. She studied Nora for a few seconds, as if gauging how ready she was to receive what came next. "The person who dropped you off," Brooks said. "Your husband, correct?" "Yes." "Did he come inside with you?" "No, he said he would come in later." Brooks gave a small nod. "That's the first thing that stood out to me," she said. "Usually, if 2 people are on the same flight, they come in together, or at least make that intention clear. I didn't see that here." Nora stayed quiet. She did not argue. Because she had felt that too. Brooks continued. "Also," she said, "I overheard part of a phone call he made while standing near the entrance. Not enough to draw a conclusion, but there were a few words that made me think it was worth checking more carefully." "What words?" Brooks looked directly at Nora. "Plan," she said. The room fell silent. Nora was not surprised. Not exactly. It was more that the vague feeling inside her had just been given a name. "I heard that too," Nora said quietly. Brooks nodded. "Then we're thinking about the same thing." She stood up, walked to the side table and picked up a small device. "I'm going to check your ticket information in the system," she said, "just to make sure everything lines up." Nora nodded. "Okay." Brooks entered a few details. The screen lit up, casting a soft bluish glow across her face. A few seconds passed. Then Brooks stopped. She didn't speak immediately, just kept looking at the screen for a moment longer. "Is something wrong?" Nora asked. Brooks turned back. "Not wrong in a clear sense," she said, "but there is one point that needs further verification." "What is it?" "Your flight information has been activated in the system," Brooks said. "That means the ticket is valid, the gate is correct, the timing is correct. But there is an indication that your boarding pass was accessed before you reached the checkpoint." Nora frowned. "Accessed how?" "It could have been opened on another device," Brooks explained, "or shared somewhere. Not necessarily a problem, but given the context, I want to be certain." Nora glanced down at her phone. She didn't remember sending it to anyone. "No," she said, "I haven't shared it." Brooks nodded. "Good. Then we'll take one more step." She made a call on the internal device. A man entered a few minutes later. Tall, composed, with a clear, attentive gaze.
He introduced himself as Marcus Hale, head of Airport Security Coordination. "We just need to verify a few details," he said calmly. "Nothing too serious." Nora nodded. "Okay." Marcus asked a few basic questions. Full name, date of birth, flight, travel companion. Nora answered clearly. Nothing was wrong. Nothing contradicted anything else. But when Marcus asked about the payment for the trip, Nora paused for a moment. "My husband booked it," she said. "I didn't handle the payment directly." Marcus made a note, then asked another question. "Have you received any emails or financial notices recently that you didn't fully understand?" Nora thought back. The envelopes, the emails, the transactions she had tried to ignore. "Yes," she said. "A few." "Have you accessed those accounts?" "No." Marcus nodded. "Thank you." He stood up, exchanged a brief look with Brooks, then turned back to Nora. "We don't have any conclusions yet," he said, "but there is enough reason to ask you to stay here a little longer while we check more thoroughly." Nora looked at him. "How long?" "Not long. Just a few more minutes." She nodded. "Okay." That time stretched longer than a few minutes. Nora sat in the room, hearing footsteps in the hallway, doors opening and closing, distant conversations. Everything sounded normal. But inside her, something else was unfolding. She began connecting the pieces, not as separate details, but as a pattern. The sudden trip, the sealed envelope, the word beneficiary, the phone call in the car, Ethan not coming inside, the boarding pass being accessed early. No single detail was enough on its own, but together they formed a direction. Marcus returned. "We've checked further," he said. "There was an access to your boarding pass from another device about 15 minutes ago." 15 minutes. Nora glanced at the time. That was when she had just entered the terminal. "That device wasn't mine," she said. "We don't believe it was," Marcus replied. A brief silence followed. Then Nora asked, "What does that mean?" Marcus did not answer right away. He chose his words carefully. "It could be a technical error," he said, "but it could also mean that someone is monitoring or managing your travel information remotely." Monitoring. The word was not dramatic, but it was enough for Nora to feel a clear shift. Not panic. Awareness. This was no longer a vague feeling. Something specific was happening. "What should I do?" she asked. Marcus looked at her. "For now," he said, "the most important thing is that you do not continue traveling on your own until we complete the verification." Nora nodded. "Okay." She did not ask more, did not argue, did not try to leave. Because for the first time, what was happening around her matched what she had been feeling inside.
She no longer needed to convince herself that everything was fine. She just needed to stay. And wait. Wait for the truth to surface. Whatever it might be. Time inside the small room moved slower than usual. Not because the clock had stopped, but because every second carried a question without an answer. Nora sat still, hands resting on her lap, her back straight. The restlessness from before had faded. In its place was a sharp, deliberate focus, the same kind she used when helping a child shape each sound with precision. Everything had to be heard carefully, seen clearly. Marcus returned a few minutes later. He did not sit right away. He stood beside the table, looking at Nora as if choosing his words. "We've checked additional data related to your flight," he said. "There's one detail we need to clarify." Nora nodded. "What is it?" "Your boarding pass," Marcus said, "was scanned in the system a few minutes ago." Nora looked at him. "I'm still here." "Exactly.
Marcus replied. That's why we need to verify further. A brief silence followed. Nora did not panic. If anything, things felt slightly clearer. So someone used my code, she said. That's a possibility, Marcus nodded. Or the system received a signal from a duplicate. Brooke stood by the door, arms crossed, her gaze steady on Nora. Have you shared your e-ticket with anyone? She asked. No, Nora replied. It's only on this phone. She handed it over. Marcus took it, checked quickly. No recent signs of it being sent, he said. But the code could have been accessed another way. Nora thought back. The laptop on the kitchen counter, the word beneficiary. The way Ethan had closed it too quickly. A small detail, but not anymore. She didn't say anything yet, just held it in her mind. Marcus placed the phone back on the table. We'll need you to stay here a little longer, he said. At the same time, we're reviewing the entire scanning process at your flight gate. Nora nodded. Okay. She did not ask more. Not because she didn't want to know, but because she understood the information was unfolding in layers, and she needed to stay calm to see each layer clearly. Out in the hallway, footsteps moved faster. Short bursts of radio chatter cut through the air. Not panic, but clearly an increase in pace. Brooks opened the door, exchanged a few quick words with someone outside, then closed it again. Your flight has just closed boarding, she said. Nora looked at her. She didn't feel regret about missing it. Only one thought. If she wasn't here, she would be there. Inside a system that now recorded her as a passenger. The realization sent a cold feeling through her. Marcus received another call. He listened, said nothing for a few seconds, then responded briefly. I understand. He ended the call, turned back to Nora. We've just confirmed, he said. Your boarding pass has been registered at the gate. Nora inhaled, slowly. That means the system believes I'm already on the plane. Yes. Silence settled in the room. No one needed to say anything. The meaning was clear enough. Nora straightened slightly. So now, she asked, I shouldn't continue the trip. Marcus shook his head. We recommend that you do not board this flight until everything is fully clarified, he said. This is a precaution for both safety and verification. Safety. The word carried a different weight now, no longer vague, no longer just a feeling, but a concrete decision. Nora nodded. Okay. Her voice did not shake, not raised, just steady. Brooks looked at her, something in her expression shifting slightly. She had seen many people in unexpected situations. Some panicked, some denied, some reacted too strongly. But Nora was none of those. She was processing. Marcus placed a glass of water in front of her. You might need a moment, he said. Nora took it, sipped lightly. Thank you. She set it down, then asked, If I don't board the flight, what happens to that information? Marcus paused for a moment. The system will still record that the code was scanned, he said, but we'll update the status once the verification is complete. Nora nodded. She didn't ask further about the process. She didn't need to. What mattered most was that she did not continue down a path she did not understand. Outside, the announcement system echoed through the terminal. The flight to Miami has completed boarding. The voice was calm, routine. No one in the airport knew that one of the passengers in the system wasn't actually there. No one knew that a small detail had just shifted the direction of an entire story. Nora stood up. She didn't want to sit anymore. I can stay here, she said, but I'd like to know when there's an update. Marcus nodded. We'll inform you as soon as we have new information. Would you like to contact a family member? The question made Nora pause. Caleb,
Maya. People who could help her see more clearly, but she shook her head. Not yet. Not because she didn't trust them, but because she wanted to walk through this part on her own, at least until things became clearer. Marcus did not push. All right, you can remain here or move to the waiting area next door. Nora looked around the room, then nodded. I'll stay. She sat back down. The space was the same, the light unchanged, but the feeling had shifted. No longer waiting in uncertainty, but waiting with the awareness that something needed to be brought into the light. She glanced at her phone. No new messages, no calls. Ethan hadn't reached out. That said more than any explanation. Nora placed the phone down, leaned back into the chair, closed her eyes for a moment. Not to escape, but to organize. When she opened them again, her gaze was steadier. No hesitation. No searching for reassurance from outside. She had begun to trust what she felt, and this time, she would follow it all the way, whatever the truth ahead might be. Nora remained seated in the small room, her back resting against the chair, her eyes fixed on the empty space ahead. The confusion from earlier was gone. The scattered questions had quieted. Everything was slowly beginning to connect into a clearer line of logic. Not complete yet, but no longer fragmented. Out in the hallway, footsteps moved faster. Brief, precise exchanges crackled over the radio. The atmosphere had shifted from routine checks to something more focused. Marcus returned, carrying a smaller device, and placed it on the table. We're cross-checking additional data from the boarding gate, he said. It may take a little longer, but it will help clarify how your code was registered. Nora nodded. She did not ask more. Not because she wasn't curious, but because she understood that the information now needed to be handled carefully. Marcus opened the device, connecting it to the internal system. Simple lines of data appeared on the screen. Timestamps, flight codes, status markers. This is when your code was recorded, he said, pointing to a line. A few minutes after you entered the terminal. Nora followed his gesture. So the person who used it wasn't me. That's correct, Marcus said. A brief silence. Then Nora asked, Is there a way to identify which device scanned it? Marcus gave a slight nod. We're working on it, he said, but it will take time. The system doesn't store detailed personal device information, only the scanning station and the time. Nora nodded. She began to realize something. This might not be about someone doing something overtly dangerous. It could be a sequence of actions involving information and data control that she didn't fully understand yet. That thought didn't reassure her. It made her more careful. Brooke stood by the door, watching Nora. You're handling this quite well, she said. Nora looked at her. I'm not sure, she replied. Brooks gave a faint smile. Most people would panic, she said. You didn't. Nora said nothing. She knew she wasn't calm in the usual sense. She just wasn't willing to ignore what she was seeing anymore. Marcus received another call. He listened, nodded, then turned back. There's another piece of information, he said. Nora looked at him. Your boarding pass was accessed from a device near the drop-off area before you entered the terminal. Nora froze slightly. The drop-off area, where she had just been, where Ethan had been. She didn't speak immediately. She just looked down at the table. A line of thought was beginning to sharpen. Marcus continued. This doesn't confirm who used it, he said, but it shows the code may have been opened or copied before you entered. Nora looked up. If that's the case, she said, then that person had access to my flight information. Yes. A quiet moment passed. Then Nora asked, Can we confirm whose device it was? Marcus shook his head slightly. Not directly, he said, but we can infer from other factors. Nora nodded.
She didn't need immediate proof.
She already understood the direction. This wasn't random. It was a sequence of intentional actions involving information. Brooks opened the door, exchanged a few quick words with someone outside. When she returned, her voice was lower. "The flight has departed," she said. Nora did not react right away. She simply listened. A piece of information, a point in time, something that, if not for this conversation, she would have been part of. She inhaled slowly, then exhaled. Marcus placed his hand lightly on the table, leaning slightly forward. "Ms. Whitman," he said, "I want to confirm one thing. Are you comfortable staying here while we complete the verification?" Nora looked at him, then nodded. Yes, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she knew that leaving now would cost her the chance to understand what was really happening. Marcus nodded. "Good." He stood. "I'll be back as soon as we have more information." Nora remained alone in the room for a few minutes. The space was quiet, the light unchanged. She looked around. Everything was simple, nothing threatening. Yet it was the place where a truth was slowly revealing itself. She thought back to the morning, the envelope, the laptop, the phone call, the way Ethan had looked at her. None of it felt separate anymore. They were forming a pattern, incomplete, but directional. Nora did not rush to conclusions. She simply noted it. Marcus returned sooner than she expected. He placed a small printed sheet on the table. "We have additional data from a secondary system," he said. Nora looked down. It was a record of boarding pass access. 2 entries, one from her device, one from another. The time difference between them was very short. Nora looked up at Marcus. "What does that mean?" Marcus answered slowly. "It's possible your ticket information was shared or duplicated earlier," he said. "Not necessarily with harmful intent, but it is something that needs clarification." Nora nodded. She did not argue. She asked something else. "If I continue the trip," she said, "will I have control over my information?" Marcus met her gaze. "Not completely," he said. "At least not until we finish verifying everything." Nora was quiet for a second. Then she spoke. "Then I won't continue." A simple sentence, but a decision. Not based on emotion, but on what she had seen. Marcus nodded. "That's a reasonable choice." Brooks looked at Nora, her expression shifting slightly. No longer just observation, recognition. Outside, the airport continued as usual. People arriving, people leaving. Flights taking off, flights landing. Everything moved on. But for Nora, the rhythm of this day had changed. She was no longer inside that flow. She stood outside it, watching, understanding. And for the first time in a long while, she did not try to force things back into something that felt normal. She accepted that something needed to be clarified, and she was ready to follow it through, no matter where it led. Nora sat still in the small room, her hands resting together, her eyes fixed on the empty space ahead, yet her mind clearer than it had ever been. The decision not to continue the trip did not bring immediate relief. Instead, it opened a new series of questions. But this time, unlike before, she did not try to silence them. She allowed them to exist. Marcus returned with a thin folder. He placed it on the table and pulled a chair across from her. His expression was not rushed, but focused. "We've compiled what we can verify at this point," he said. "It's not a final conclusion, but it's enough for you to see the broader picture." Nora nodded. She looked at the folder, not out of curiosity, but because she wanted to understand. Marcus opened the first page. "Basic flight information," he said. "Your ticket is valid. The reservation is correct.
No issues in the booking process. He turned to the next page. This is the access record, he continued. There were 2 instances, one from your device, one from another device outside the terminal. Nora looked. The time gap between the 2 was very short. A small detail, but an important one. Marcus went on. We also checked transaction records related to this trip, he said. All of them were made from a single source. My husband, Nora said. Marcus did not confirm directly, but his eyes made it clear enough. Nora did not ask further. She understood. Not every detail, but the direction. A carefully arranged trip. A boarding code accessed from 2 locations. A husband who did not walk in with her. A sequence of actions that was no longer random. Brooks stood by the door, watching. There was one thing she had learned over the years. People do not always need to be told they are in an unusual situation. Sometimes they recognize it themselves. And Nora had reached that point. I need to ask something else, Nora said. Marcus nodded. If I don't board the flight, she said, but the system still records that I did, what happens then? Marcus paused for a moment. Under normal circumstances, he said, it's simply a data discrepancy that gets corrected. But if someone relies on that information to make other decisions, then clarifying it early becomes important. Nora nodded. She understood. This was not about a single risk. It was about a chain of consequences, and she did not want to be part of that chain without understanding it. Her phone still lay on the table. No new calls, no messages. Ethan had not reached out. Another detail. One she no longer needed to interpret in a positive way. She simply noted it. Marcus stood. We'll continue verifying, he said. But for now, I recommend that you remain in this area until we have a clearer direction. Nora nodded. Okay. She did not feel held back. She felt in control. That was the difference. Brooks opened the door and gestured. If you need to rest, there's a room next door, she said. Nora stood. She stepped out into the hallway with Brooks. The space outside was brighter, louder. The rhythm of the airport carried on as usual. But for Nora, everything seemed slower. They passed a row of glass panels. Outside, the drop-off area was still crowded. Nora glanced out. Not searching, just looking. Ethan was no longer there. Not surprising. She turned back. We'll stay in contact with the outside team, Brooks said. If there's any new information, you'll know. Thank you, Nora replied. Brooks looked at her for a moment. You're doing the right thing, she said. Nora did not respond immediately. She wasn't sure what right meant anymore. She only knew that she was no longer doing what she used to. No more ignoring. No more delaying. No more convincing herself that everything would be fine if she just didn't look too closely. She stepped into a small waiting room. There was a couch, a low table, a water dispenser. She sat down. For the first time since morning, she allowed her back to relax. Not because everything was over, but because she had chosen to face it. She closed her eyes for a few seconds. Breathed in, breathed out. Images from the morning surfaced again in her mind. The envelope, the laptop, the phone call. Ethan's gaze. But this time they were no longer separate. They connected. Not complete, but enough for her to know that her decision had been necessary. She opened her eyes, her gaze steady. No hesitation. No searching for reassurance from the outside. She had begun to trust what she felt. And that changed everything. Marcus stepped in a few minutes later. We have another step, he said. Nora looked at him. What step? We need to cross-check information from outside sources, he said. It may involve revisiting some locations from this morning, but under controlled conditions. Nora thought for a second, then nodded. Okay.
no hesitation, no avoidance. Because she understood. To move beyond uncertainty, she had to walk through it. Marcus looked at her, his expression shifting slightly. He didn't say anything, but it was clear. Nora was no longer being carried along. She was participating, active, aware. And for the first time in this entire story, she did not feel like she was behind. She was stepping forward, even if the path ahead was not yet fully clear. And this time, she would see it through.
Marcus did not let the silence linger. He closed the folder, stood up, and gestured for Nora to follow. Brooks walked behind them, keeping just enough distance to observe without creating pressure. The three of them left the enclosed room and stepped back into the bright hallway, where the flow of people continued as if nothing had happened. "We're going back to the drop-off area," Marcus said, not to look for anyone in particular, but to align the timing and perspective. The clearer the starting point, the easier it is to understand everything else. Nora nodded. She pulled her suitcase behind her. The wheels rolled across the tiled floor in a steady rhythm, like a quiet count marking a process unfolding with order and precision. Nothing dramatic. No one running. No raised voices. And yet, that very calmness made everything sharper. They passed a wide row of glass panels. The morning light had shifted to a softer golden tone. Outside, cars moved in and out continuously. People stepped out, pulled luggage, hurried, paused for phone calls. A familiar scene, the kind you would see at any airport. Marcus stopped at a vantage point overlooking the drop-off lane. "Where were you standing when you got out of the car?" he asked. Nora looked out, her gaze moving slowly, as if placing each detail back into its original position. "Near that pillar," she said, pointing. The car pulled up along the curb. I stood there, then pulled my suitcase inside. Marcus nodded. He exchanged a few quick words with the technician nearby. The technician opened a handheld device and brought up the camera layout for the area. On the small screen, multiple frames appeared, showing different angles of the drop-off zone. "We just need to align the timeline," Marcus said. "Not to find fault, but to understand the sequence." Nora stood still. She watched the moving frames. Cars stopping, people stepping out, doors opening, doors closing. The motions repeated, steady, almost unremarkable. Then one frame paused. Marcus pointed to it. "This is when you stepped out," he said. Nora looked. She saw herself. A version from just a few hours earlier, hand on her suitcase, shoulders slightly tense, eyes directed toward the glass doors. Ethan stood beside her. He closed the trunk, did not go inside, exactly as she remembered. Marcus moved to the next frame. "And here," he said, "is when your boarding code was accessed for the second time." The timestamp appeared in the corner, very close to the moment Nora had entered the terminal. She looked carefully. Nothing obviously unusual, just the flow of people. But then she noticed something small. A familiar movement, Ethan standing by the car, phone in hand. The screen angled toward him. A quick motion. The content unclear, but enough to trigger recognition. The way he had looked at his phone. The way he spoke in the car. The way he did not want her to hear Caleb's call. A chain of details, no longer separate. Marcus did not draw a conclusion. He simply watched Nora. "What do you see?" he asked. Nora did not answer immediately. She kept looking for a few more seconds, then spoke. "There's a very short window," she said, "between when I walked in and when the code was accessed. And the person closest to that information was him." Marcus gave a slight nod. "That's a reasonable observation," he said, "but we still need further verification before making any formal conclusion." Nora nodded. She did not need a conclusion yet.
She only needed direction, and that direction was becoming clearer. Behind them, Brooks said nothing, but her gaze had changed. No longer just observing a passenger, she was watching someone actively participating in understanding her own situation. Marcus turned off the screen. "Let's go back to the room," he said. "I have another step to discuss with you." They left the glass corridor and returned inside. Nora's pace did not quicken, but it was steadier. The hesitation that once lived in each step was gone. Back in the small room, Marcus closed the door and placed the folder on the table. "We can continue verifying through technical means," he said, "but there's another way that could clarify things faster." Nora looked at him. "What way?" Marcus met her eyes directly. "We can confirm directly with the person involved." A brief silence. Nora understood immediately. "My husband." Marcus did not deny it. "Yes." Brooks stepped a little closer. "Not to confront," she said, "to clarify. If this is just a misunderstanding, this would be the fastest way to resolve it." Nora remained still. She was not afraid of that conversation, but she knew it would change everything. Once a question is asked directly, there is no space left for vague answers, no room to delay. She inhaled slowly, then asked, "If I agree, do I have the right to stop at any point?" Marcus nodded. "Always." Nora nodded. "Okay." No hesitation, no conditions, just a clear decision. Marcus picked up his phone, speaking briefly with the team outside. "We'll reach out and ask him to return to this area," he said. "No pressure, just a conversation." Nora listened. There was no surge of emotion, no anger, no fear. Only a quiet preparation. She knew she was stepping into a conversation she had avoided for a long time. Not because she didn't see the problem, but because she wanted to keep things okay. And that version of okay had led her here. This time she was not choosing that path. Brooks placed a glass of water in front of her. "You might need this," she said. Nora took it. "Thank you." She took a small sip, set it down, then looked straight at Marcus. "When?" Marcus glanced at his watch. "Not long," he said. "He's still nearby. We'll know as soon as he returns." Nora nodded. She did not look at her phone, did not try to delay, did not think about what she would say. She simply sat there, present, ready. Outside, the airport continued as usual. But inside this small room, a conversation was being prepared. Not for conflict, not for accusation, but for clarity. And for Nora, that was what she had been waiting for all along. Not a perfect answer, just the truth. Whatever it might be. Time inside the room seemed to slow down. There was no ticking clock, yet Nora could feel each moment passing through the way the air grew quieter, through the way the light outside the window shifted from a pale yellow into something clearer. She did not reach for her phone. She did not move around. She simply sat upright, her hands resting on her thighs, her gaze steady. Marcus stood near the door, speaking briefly into his radio. His voice was low, precise, not a single word wasted. Brooks leaned lightly against the wall, watching Nora. She did not interfere. She did not ask questions. She was simply there, a quiet presence. Then the door opened. Ethan Whitman stepped in. He paused at the threshold for a second, as if he needed a moment to understand where he was. His eyes moved quickly across the room, then stopped at Nora. The surprise was unmistakable. Not mild, not casual. It was a break in rhythm. He had not expected to see her here. Nora looked at him. She did not stand, did not walk toward him, did not turn away. She simply looked. The distance between them was not large, but it had never felt farther.
Marcus stepped forward. "Mr. Whitman," he said, "thank you for coming back. We need to confirm a few details related to this morning's trip." Ethan nodded, a little slower than usual. "Okay. What's going on?" His voice remained calm on the surface, but Nora saw it. He was managing the situation, not reacting naturally. Marcus did not circle around the point. Nora's boarding pass was accessed from outside the terminal before she entered, he said. "We need to confirm whether you used or accessed that information." A very brief silence. Ethan looked at Marcus, then at Nora, then back at Marcus. "I may have opened the ticket on my phone," he said. "Just to check." The answer came quickly, too quickly. Nora said nothing. She waited. Marcus gave a slight nod. "Would you mind letting us see your device?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, then took out his phone, placed it on the table. Marcus picked it up, checking the access history. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Nora observed. "Not the phone, Ethan. The way he stood, the way his hands rested, the way his eyes moved. Everything was familiar, but this time, she saw it differently. She was no longer trying to interpret it in a positive way. She simply noted it." Marcus placed the phone back down. "There are indications that the boarding code was accessed at that time," he said. "This aligns with system data." Ethan nodded. "I just wanted to make sure everything was okay," he said. Nora spoke for the first time. "You didn't come in with me." Her voice was not raised, not accusing, just a question. Ethan turned toward her. "I had something urgent to handle," he said. "I thought you could check in on your own." Nora looked at him. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then she continued. "You said everything is still on track during your call in the car," she said. "What plan?" The question landed softly, but it could not be ignored. Ethan paused. "Just a moment." "But enough." He exhaled. "It's just work," he said. "A project." Nora did not nod, did not disagree. She simply looked and waited. Marcus did not interfere. He allowed the conversation to unfold, within a controlled space. No pressure, but clear enough. Nora continued. "Did you open my ticket before I went in?" Ethan looked down at the table, then gave a small nod. "Yes. Why?" "I just wanted to make sure you had everything you needed," he replied. Nora did not respond immediately. She remembered the morning, the way Ethan checked the suitcase, the way he held his phone, the way he didn't let her hear Caleb's call, the way he stayed outside, did not come in with her. Each detail could be explained on its own, but together they were no longer simple. Marcus spoke again. "Mr. Whitman," he said, "aside from accessing the ticket, did you share this flight information with anyone else?" Ethan shook his head. "No." His voice was firm, but his eyes were not completely steady. Brooke stepped a little closer. "Did you receive any calls related to this trip this morning?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. Briefly, then answered, "A few work calls, not related." Nora looked at him. She did not interrupt, did not press. She simply held his gaze. And that silence made the gaps in his answers more visible. Marcus nodded. "Thank you," he said. "We'll continue reviewing to ensure all information is accurate." He did not conclude, did not accuse. He kept everything at the level of verification. Ethan exhaled lightly, as if he had just passed through something. He turned to Nora. "Are you okay?" A familiar question, a familiar tone. But Nora did not answer the way she used to. She did not say, "I'm fine."
She did not smile. She simply said, "I'm understanding more now." Ethan did not respond. There was no suitable answer to that. Marcus looked at Nora. "Would you like to continue the conversation further?" he asked. Nora shook her head. "Not yet," she said it calmly. Not because she had no more questions, but because she had enough for this moment. She stood up, looked at Ethan. No anger, no visible hurt, just clarity. "We'll talk later," she said. Not a promise, not a threat, just a fact. Ethan gave a slight nod, uncertain. Marcus opened the door. "Thank you for your cooperation," he said to Ethan. Ethan left. The door closed. The room returned to silence. Brooks looked at Nora. "Are you okay?" Nora inhaled, exhaled, then nodded. "Yes," she said it simply. Not because everything had been explained, but because she had seen enough. No need to force more. Marcus stepped closer. "We'll continue handling the rest," he said. "But with what we have now, you've done very well." Nora did not answer immediately. She looked down at the table, at the spot where Ethan's phone had just been. A small object, but it held so many unspoken things. She looked up, her voice steady. "I want to know the full truth," she said. "Not right now, but I won't stop." Marcus nodded. "Neither will we."
Outside, the airport continued. Other flights prepared to depart. Other passengers moved forward. But for Nora, the most important journey was no longer the trip to Miami. It was the journey of understanding her own life. And this time, she was not walking it alone. She was moving with clarity. And with the resolve not to return to the way she used to live, no matter how much remained unknown ahead. The room returned to silence after Ethan left. No door slammed, no hurried footsteps. Everything settled back into place. Clean, almost neutral. But for Nora, something had clearly shifted. Not in the space around her, but in the way she was seeing it. She no longer felt like she had been pulled into something unexpected. She was inside a process now, one she could finally understand the direction of. Marcus pulled out a chair and sat across from her. He did not open the folder right away. He simply observed her for a moment, as if assessing her state after the conversation. "You handled that very well," he said. Nora gave a slight shake of her head. "I just don't want to ignore things anymore," she replied. Marcus nodded. "That's what matters." A brief pause. Then he opened the folder, turning to the next page. "We've cross-checked additional data from outside sources," he said. "There are a few details related to finances and this trip that you should be aware of." Nora looked at him. She did not avoid it. She just waited. Marcus pointed to a section. "This trip was paid entirely from an account under your husband's name," he said. "Nothing unusual on the surface. But there are some recent transactions related to insurance and personal financial management that need further clarification." Nora listened. The word insurance was not unfamiliar. She had seen it before, on the laptop screen. A single word, but enough to stay in her memory. "What kind of insurance?" she asked. Marcus did not answer directly. "We're verifying the details," he said. "But in principle, any financial agreement involving an individual should be transparent to both parties." Nora nodded. She understood. She did not need technical explanations. She just needed to know that there were things she had not been told. Brooks stepped closer and placed a small sheet of paper on the table. "This is a list of documents we're reviewing," she said. "Not all of them are directly connected, but together they help build the full picture." Nora looked down. The items were clearly listed. Nothing overly complicated, but enough to show that this situation went beyond a flight.
It was about how information was handled, how decisions were made, how one person could manage multiple factors without the other even realizing. Nora looked up. "What do I need to do next?" she asked. Marcus did not answer immediately. He considered it. "For now," he said, "the most important thing is that you stay in this state. Don't rush back into your original plans. Don't make changes to your personal information until everything is fully verified." Nora nodded. "Okay." She did not feel restricted. She felt positioned, able to observe more clearly. Marcus continued. "We also recommend that you avoid sharing the details of this situation widely for now," he said. "Not to hide anything, but to prevent misunderstanding before all the facts are clear." Nora thought for a moment, then nodded. She understood.
Not everything needs to be said immediately. Some things need to be understood first. Brooks looked at Nora. "Do you want to go home?" she asked. A simple question, but layered. Nora was silent for a second. Images surfaced. The house, the kitchen, the table, the laptop, the envelope. Quiet evenings, unanswered questions. She inhaled, then spoke. Not yet. Not because she was afraid, but because she was not ready to return to that space without understanding everything. Marcus nodded. "We can arrange a temporary place for you if needed," he said. Nora looked at him. "Thank you." She did not resist, did not refuse. She simply acknowledged it. For the first time, she did not feel the need to handle everything alone. She allowed herself time. Marcus stood up. "We'll continue working with the data we have," he said. "If there's anything new, you'll be informed right away." Nora stood as well. She did not rush, did not hesitate. She simply moved at her own pace. They left the room, walked down the hallway, returned to the open area of the airport. The light was stronger, the sound clearer, but Nora was no longer pulled into it. She paused for a moment near a large glass wall, looked out toward the runway in the distance. A plane was moving, slow, steady, then gaining speed, lifting off. She watched it. She did not think about the flight she had missed. She did not feel regret. Only one realization. Not every journey is meant to be taken. Some are meant to be paused, to understand, to adjust, to choose a different direction. Marcus stood a short distance away, not interrupting, just waiting. Nora turned back. "Where do we go next?" she asked. Marcus looked at her. "Somewhere safe, where you can rest and continue following the updates," he said. Nora nodded. "Okay." No hesitation. No need for more time. She had already passed the hardest part. The part where she had to decide whether to look at the truth. Now, she just needed to keep moving forward, with the clarity she had found. They left the terminal through a different exit, quieter, less crowded. A car was waiting outside. The door opened. Nora stepped in, sat in the back seat. Marcus took the front. The car started moving, leaving the airport behind. Through the window, Nora looked back, not to return, but to mark it. A moment, a morning, a decision, a new direction. She did not know exactly what was ahead, but she knew one thing. She would not go back to the way things were. No more ignoring, no more delaying, no more asking questions without seeking answers. The car merged into traffic. The city opened up ahead. And this time Nora did not feel carried along. She was choosing, step by step, decision by decision. And her real journey had only just begun. The car left the airport area and merged into the growing morning traffic. Road signs, gas stations, and coffee shops slipped past the window like a familiar sequence of images. Everything continued at the city's usual rhythm.
But for Nora, this morning had separated into something else, a different layer, one where she saw more clearly, heard more sharply, and no longer ignored the things she used to push aside. Marcus did not speak much during the drive. He took a few calls, exchanged brief, precise words, then ended them. Brooks was not with them. She had stayed behind at the airport to coordinate with the team inside. The space in the car was quiet, but not heavy. It felt like a necessary pause between what had just happened and what was about to come. "We're heading to a temporary place," Marcus said after a while. "You can rest there, and we'll continue verifying the remaining information." Nora nodded. She did not ask for the exact location, not because she didn't care, but because she had accepted the process. She no longer felt the need to control every small detail just to feel safe. Instead, she focused on what mattered, understanding, staying calm, and not returning to the old pattern. The apartment was in a low-rise building near the water, not far from the city center but quiet enough to separate it from the urgency of the airport. Marcus opened the door and let Nora step in first. Inside, the space was simple: a table, 2 chairs, a small couch, and a bedroom tucked further inside. Thick curtains softened the light. "You can stay here for a few days," Marcus said. "Everything you need is here. If you need anything else, let me know." Nora placed her suitcase by the wall. "Thank you." She walked a few steps around the room, not to inspect but to adjust. Every new space takes time before it becomes somewhere you can breathe normally. Marcus placed a small phone on the table. "A separate line," he said. "We'll use it to update you. You don't need to use your personal phone unless necessary." Nora looked at the device. A small detail, but enough to tell her the situation was still unfolding. "Okay," she said. Marcus nodded. He did not stay long. After a few brief instructions, he left, closing the door behind him. No loud sound. Just a quiet stillness settling in. Nora stood in the middle of the room for a few seconds. She did nothing, did not think too much, just stood there. Then she sat down, leaning back slightly, her eyes drifting toward the window. Outside, the water reflected the midday light. A small boat passed, leaving a thin ripple behind. She took out her personal phone. The screen lit up. No new messages from Ethan, no missed calls. She looked at his name in her contacts for a moment. Did not press, did not delete, just looked, then placed the phone down. There were conversations that needed to happen, but not now. She stood up, walked into the bedroom, placed her suitcase on the bed, and opened it. The clothes were neatly folded, just as they had been the night before. A short trip, a simple plan. But now it was no longer a trip. It was a turning point. She closed the suitcase. No need to rearrange anything. She returned to the living room, sat down, and began to think back. Not to blame herself, but to understand. She remembered the past few months, the times Ethan spoke about finances without details, the emails she had skimmed through and ignored, the moments when something felt off, yet she told herself she was being too sensitive. It was not that she didn't see, it was that she didn't trust what she saw enough. And that was what she was changing. The small phone on the table vibrated. Nora looked. A message from Marcus. "We've confirmed additional information related to accounts and financial agreements. There is no immediate risk, but there is a lack of transparency that needs to be clarified. We'll discuss details when necessary." Nora read it. There was no alarming word, no urgent warning, but it confirmed one thing. What she had felt was not imagined. She set the phone down, exhaled slowly, then stood and walked toward the window. The light fell across her face. The fatigue from the morning had faded. The tension from the airport was gone. What remained was clarity. She thought of Caleb, her brother, direct, unfiltered, the one she had not called back. She picked up her personal phone.
This time she pressed the call. The ringing. Once. Twice. 3 times. Caleb answered. Nora. His voice was the same. Straightforward, no hesitation. I'm okay, Nora said first. A brief pause on the other end. Then Caleb replied, You don't sound like your usual okay. Nora gave a faint smile. You're always like that. Yeah. She did not explain everything, just enough. That she was somewhere safe, that there were things that needed to be clarified, that she had decided not to continue the trip. Caleb did not press, did not judge. He listened, then said one thing. You didn't ignore it this time. Nora looked out the window. No, she said. Not anymore. The call ended. Not long, but enough. Nora set the phone down. She did not feel the need to explain herself to many people. Just a few who understood. And more importantly, she understood herself. The afternoon passed slowly. She did not do much, just sat, walked around, drank water, looked outside. Small actions, but they kept her steady, kept her grounded, did not let her thoughts run too far ahead. As the sky began to change, the light in the room softened. The small phone vibrated again. Marcus. We've confirmed more details, he said. Tomorrow we may need your help to clarify a few final points. Nora nodded, even though he could not see her. Okay. Her voice was firm. No hesitation. After the call, she turned off the main light, leaving only a soft glow near the window. She sat down, looked outside. The city lights began to appear, one by one, quietly, but clearly.
Just like the way things inside her were beginning to come into focus. Not all at once, not instantly, but enough to see the path. And this time, she knew where she was going. Not following a plan someone else had set, but following her own choices, step by step. Clear, and without turning back. The next morning arrived slowly and clearly. Light filtered through the thick curtains, not harsh, just enough to redraw the shape of the room. Nora woke earlier than usual, not out of anxiety, but because something inside her was quietly preparing for what was about to unfold. She sat up, placing her feet on the floor. The first sensation was steadiness. No lingering dizziness from the day before. No looping questions. Just a clear sense of what needed to be done and what needed to be understood. The small phone on the table lit up. A message from Marcus. We've completed most of the verification. Today we'll need you for a short session to align the final details. Nothing complicated. Nora read it. Then set the phone down. She did not rush. She walked into the small kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood by the window. Outside, the water was calm in the early light. A few cars passed by, the city beginning its day but without urgency. She thought back to the morning before, the airport, the line, the door opening. A decision. If she had not stopped at that moment, she would have followed a different path. Not better, just unclear. And that alone made her grateful for the choice she had made. An hour later, Marcus arrived. He carried less than the day before, just a thin folder and a pen. It said enough on its own. Most of the story had already been clarified. We'll go through a few final points, he said as he stepped in. Nora nodded. She sat at the table. Marcus opened the folder. What we've verified, he said, shows that the trip, the access to your boarding code, and several financial transactions all trace back to the same source. He did not need to say more. Nora understood. Not every detail had to be named for the full picture to come into view. Marcus continued. There's no indication that you were in direct danger, he said,
But there is a lack of transparency in how information was handled, and that needs to be addressed clearly between both sides. Nora nodded. She was not looking for a dramatic conclusion. She only needed clarity. Marcus placed a sheet of paper in front of her. "This is a summary of what's been confirmed," he said. "You can read it, and if needed, we'll support you in the next steps." Nora took the paper, read slowly, line by line. Nothing shocking, but each line reinforced something she had already felt. That she had not been given full information about decisions affecting her life. That actions had taken place without her knowledge. That the feeling of something being off had not been imagined. She set the paper down, looked up. "Thank you," she said. Marcus nodded. "We only help clarify," he said. "The next decision is yours." A simple sentence, but important. Nora did not need more time. She had been thinking since the day before. She stood. "I'll talk to him," she said. Marcus did not ask further. He simply nodded. "If you need support, we're here." Nora nodded. She did not return to the airport.
She did not go back to the temporary apartment right away. She went straight home. A familiar road. Rows of similar houses, lines of trees. Everything still there. But it felt different. The car stopped in front of her house. Nora stepped out, stood at the entrance. She did not go in immediately. She just stood there, looking, remembering what had taken place inside. Mornings, evenings, conversations, silences. Then she opened the door, stepped inside. No one was home. The air was still, as if nothing had happened. But she knew. Everything had changed. She set her bag down, walked into the kitchen. The table was still there. The laptop was no longer open, but the memory of the word beneficiary remained clear. She did not search further, did not go through anything, did not check. She didn't need to. She walked into the living room, sat down. For the first time since the morning before, she stayed in this space without avoiding it. No more stepping around it, no more delaying. Just being there. After a while, the door opened. Ethan walked in. He paused when he saw her. Not surprised like the day before. Just a slight tension. "You're back," he said. Nora looked at him, nodded. "We need to talk," she said. No detour, no preparation, just what was necessary. Ethan stood still for a few seconds, then nodded. "Okay." They sat across from each other. No Marcus, no Brooks, no one else, just the two of them, and what needed to be said. Nora did not begin with a question. She began with a truth. "I know about the information that wasn't shared with me," she said. Her voice was calm, not raised, not shaking. Ethan did not interrupt. He looked at her, waited. Nora continued. "I'm not here to argue," she said. "I'm here to understand and decide." A pause, not heavy, but clear. Ethan exhaled. Then he began to speak. Not fast, not perfect, but for the first time not avoiding. What he said did not change the past, but it clarified the present. Nora listened, did not interrupt, did not judge immediately. Just listened, to close a cycle. When the conversation ended, there was no argument, no dramatic moment, just a different kind of silence, a silence of understanding. Nora stood. She did not need many words, just one sentence. "I will choose what's best for me." Ethan did not stop her, did not hold her back, did not add more explanations. Because he understood. The decision had been made before the conversation even began. Nora picked up her bag, walked toward the door. This time, she did not look back. Not because she did not care, but because she had completed her part here.
Outside, the afternoon light was warmer, the wind light. Nothing remarkable. But for Nora, it was a beginning. Not loud, not grand. Just clear. If you've stayed with this story until this point, you may have stood at a similar crossroads, between ignoring and facing, between staying the same and changing. The choice is not always easy, but listening to yourself is always the first step.
If this story made you reflect, feel free to leave a comment and share your thoughts. And if you want to follow more stories that help you understand yourself and your relationships more clearly, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because sometimes, what changes your life is not a big event, but a very small decision, made at the right moment. Nora's story is not meant to shock. It's meant to remind you of something simple. Your feelings exist for a reason. In life, we often ignore small signs just to keep things stable. But those moments when you pause, listen, and truly see are the first steps to protecting yourself. If you've ever felt that something wasn't right, but hesitated to face it, give yourself time to think again. No need to rush. Just be honest with yourself. If this story gave you a new perspective, leave a comment and share it. Your perspective might help someone else recognize what they've been missing. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that help you understand yourself, your relationships, and your decisions more clearly. See you in the next video.